It's time to look at my Toronto Raptors. How did they do in 2023-24? What does it mean for the future? How do we view this team? Michael Bolton's got some thoughts.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd, and I had a bunch of things that I wanted to talk about with Drake, but I think it's already been covered. I'm also the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_bball, on TikTok at redrock_bball, and on Instagram at LockedOnFantasyBasketball. We're going to talk more about Monopoly Go, though, the fast-paced game that lets you and your friends team up for tournaments to unlock awesome prizes like unique stickers for trading, cool playing pieces, and hilarious emojis for taunting your friends. So download Monopoly Go now, free on Google Play or the App Store. Thank you also for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. We are free. We're available on all platforms. If you want to double bang it, you can. Hit the thumb. Subscribe. Thumb it up again. Nah, don't do it twice because I'll take it away. But leave your comments. Listen on all platforms. You know how all of that goes. We are here to talk, like I said, about the Toronto Raptors. A season which was bad. It was, I still don't 100% know what they're doing. That was more so the case last season, where they feel like, and Masai Ujiri admitted this, he's like, I should have moved on from these guys. I had too close of a relationship with them. I just didn't want to get rid of them, and I understand that. I totally understand the personal part of that and all the things that these guys brought to the team, but he left his team in purgatory. He's surrendered maybe a pretty strong top 7 pick. That's potentially there as well. And still some of the moves that were made, I was like, a little bit of that happening with it. They are going to be bad, I think, for a little bit of time. And it's not without hope, though. There are some good things happening with this team. But it wasn't a very good season. But at least they've realized their delusion and have moved on from that. Which is, again, you can't ask for much more. Look, you want things to be done correctly at the right time. But figuring out the mistake and then making the adjustments when you do, well, that's to be applauded as well. Let's have a look at the team overall. Let's have a look at where they sat. It was bad. 25-57 was their record. They had a negative 6.7 net rating, so it's nowhere near the real bad ones. The negative 10s of the Hornets and the Blazers, negative 9s of the Wizards and the Pistons. Negative 6.7, 25-57. They're the 24th best offense and 27th best defense. Their preseason over-under was hilariously off, 36.5. As you see, so many of the preseason over-unders are off by like 10 wins, 8 wins, which is just something you don't get that often. You don't get that big a discrepancy. I'm going to have a look where I had them. I had them at 38. That's a huge L for me. Hang on a second. I had them at 38 originally, and then I did change them to 32. All right, so 32 is a W. Yeah, 32. I'll take 32 as a W there. My initial over-under was 38, and I'm looking at my second column here. 32 is what we went for. All right, that's a huge W, although it's still way off where they actually were. But like I said, I would expect more pain from this squad in terms of where they sit moving forward. We'll find out. What about the draft? That pick was traded with a top 6 protection for Jakob Poeltl. A horrendous trade at the time. Then they doubled down and extended Poeltl, who I think is good. But 4 years, $80 million. They've only got a 45.9% chance of keeping this pick, so odds are they don't. The good thing is there that the only way that they can get it is if it's either picks 1 through 4 or pick 6. It's not like they get to keep it and it's pick 11 or something. So if they do keep it, in that 46% chance, it's a good pick. It can't finish at 5. It can only finish 1 to 4 in the lottery, pick 6, or if anybody jumps them, then they lose it. They do have another first rounder, Indiana's first rounder from the Pascal Siakam trade, pick 19. And they've also got pick 31, which is the Detroit Pistons second round pick, which they got via the Knicks as part of the RJ Barrett, OG Anunoby deal, which is a pretty high-quality second-round pick. It's not ideal. I would have preferred them to get a first-round pick, but whatever. Pick 31 is better than what some of the other bad teams have got. They've already got one of the bad teams' second-round picks there in the Detroit Pistons. Their most common starting group, if I am going to, which I am, only including players who are still on the team, Immanuel Quickley, Gary Trent, RJ Barrett, Scott Barnes, and Jakob Poeltl. It was actually their second most used lineup overall. Their most used lineup was actually Schroeder, Barnes, Anunoby, Siakam, and Poeltl. But of course, we know 3 of those 5 players were traded. What is interesting is that their best lineup of players who are still on the team is the same as that starting group, plus 11.8. Quickley, Trent, Barrett, Barnesy, and Poeltl. And part of the reason why they were so bad, especially so bad down the stretch, was A, deliberate tanking, but B, their bench was horrific. Like, it was terrible. And they had no depth whatsoever. And that's going to be part of the challenge in terms of getting them back to being good. You can say, well, we've got some interesting players, and Barrett and Barnes and Quickley, and that's cool. But, man, the depth there's nothing. Like, it's terrible. And that's going to be the problem. One of the big things is going to be Immanuel Quickley, who is a restricted free agent. They've also got Malik Williams, who started a couple of games. That was when I'm talking about depth. No depth, but also deliberate tanking. Immanuel Quickley is restricted. He will come back without any question, I don't think. And I think he's going to make $25 million a year. And we'll see. He had some struggles in Toronto when he initially arrived. He definitely wasn't playing at the same level that he was in New York. But towards the end of the season, he did improve. And I still think he can be at least a top half NBA point guard with maybe top 50, probably top 40 fantasy upside. We'll talk about him a little bit more later. Unrestricted, there is another one of their starters is Gary Trent Jr., who I really don't think they're going to highly prioritize. There's Jordan Nwora and Garrett Temple, who shouldn't have been on a roster this season, but here we are. And Jordan Nwora is a guy that never seems to find a regular rotation role. I think he's okay at times, but just never does enough. Trent's going to be the interesting one. I really don't think he'll be back. I don't think they should prioritize him, but who knows? Like, who knows? He is still pretty young, Gaz, but I would not be looking at him as a guy that is returning here, nor would I be looking at him as a guy that waltzes into a 30-minute-a-night role on another team. There's one guy with a team option, and this is going to be probably the most intriguing decision this team makes, and it is the Shark, Bruce Brown. He's got a $23 million team option Brownie, who struggled a bit in Indiana, but it was okay. But I thought really struggled in Toronto, had a lot of knee problems. We thought that he would be dealt at the deadline. He was not. I would expect that this team option gets picked up, but then it is used potentially in a trade, whether that's to make them worse, get picks out of it, some younger players, or as part of a package to do a quick turnaround. I don't know. I would be very surprised if Brown is playing on the Raptors at the end of next season. And that won't be because they decline the option, because they will pick it up. There's one non-guaranteed player, that's Javon Freeman-Liberty, who started some games down the stretch. He was on the Bulls Summer League team. They signed him to a two-way, the Raptors, and then converted him to a full contract. Sure, he's all right, but I don't think there's any starter potential. I don't think there's any sixth-man potential there. Maybe it's a rotation player. Maybe. Expiring deals next season. Well, Scottie Barnes will be in the final year of his rookie contract. That means he is extension eligible as soon as we hit the beginning of free agency, July 1st. He will get a max rookie extension. No question about that. I would guess full 5 years, full max. Obviously wasn't eligible for most improved player, so there you go. Didn't win that this year. But he will get a full rookie extension without question. Chris Boucher is unrestricted. He is 33 now. He had a few moments, but then an injury at the end of the year ended things. I don't think that he'll be back. Jalen McDaniels was a complete bust of a signing. He just barely played, and when he did, he was terrible. And then there is the two-way guys, DJ Carton and Mamadou Gay, who are going to be on the second year of their two-ways. McDaniels and Boucher, one more year left, but yeah, I would imagine they would be looked to be included in deals there also, to get some other value coming in. Today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. We've got to pause talking about sport to talk about Monopoly Go, because why don't we? You hear things like flag on the play, apparently. Well, we don't need to talk about flags on the play. We don't need to talk about RJ Barrett. We don't need to talk about the Raptors. We need to talk now about Monopoly Go. Team up with your friends for timed tournaments. You work together, you build up each other's boards, but you can also go in and attack your friends as well. Destroy their boards. take their money out of their banks. But you help them out. You send them cards in the trading section to help build out collections. So many different ways to play and enjoy Monopoly Go, and it's free to download. So there's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. Get off the bench and download it for free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on. Okay, that is the team overview. Let's start with talking about the starters. I'm going to have 6 players that we talk about with this team because I'm going to include Trent and Dick as the 2 options there. Like the big fella, grade A, he did start games down the stretch, and ideally you would think that they took him in the lottery because they envisage him to be a starter, and they don't envisage Gary Trent remaining on this team. But I don't know that because I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say we got to see good Dick this season. I'd say we got mediocre with some occasional moments, but it wasn't the Dick that I think Raptors fans were hoping that they'd get. But we're going to start with the best player on this team. We're going to talk about my favorite player in the NBA. It is Scottie Barnes. I've always been a huge Barnes fan. I've told you guys all the time how good I think he is and how much of a future star he is going to be. And finally, my predictions came true. So happy to take a huge W there on that as being the big Barnes fan that I am. Now, before you start screaming, of course, that's not true. I was okay with Barnes in the draft. I did not have him as a top 5 player. That is going to end up looking wrong. I did not like his second year in the NBA. I didn't think he should have won Rookie of the Year. I still stand by that. I didn't like his second year in the NBA. I was totally correct on that. But I also did not expect him to break out into the player he was in year 3. And he was great. There is a level of caution I think we need to apply to Barnes because he had an amazing first 2.5 months of the season. And then he did slow down quite a bit. And if Barnes can't get back to that level of shooting, then we start to get into some problems where him as the number 1 guy handling the ball leads to some concerns. Because he came out, shot unbelievably from 2, from 3, rebounded through the roof, blocked everything, got steals, got assists. RJ Barrett arrived and it went a little bit like I don't really know how to explain. Like he shot 28% from 3 last season, Barnesy. That's, terrible. This season, it looks much better, 34%. That's a career best for his 3-point shooting. But as the season went on, like that dropped a lot. If you were to see the graph of Scott Barnes' shooting, like it's goes like that. Which way I'm going to get my hands right? It goes like this, and it just keeps going down. So that is a problem. Because if he goes back to being a 30% shooter that he was for year 1 and year 2, then we start to have conversations of what is he as a player. He was 20th in fantasy, -1 rankings. He was 50th on Yahoo because he missed some games and 20th in points leagues. He had an ADP of 51, smashed through that. I had him at about 60-something, I think, which is a clear miss. But I think that my process with it is still relatively sound, and with that process, you are going to be wrong. Because going in and looking at a player and expecting them to take gigantic leaps forward in multiple rate categories, like rebound rate, 100% up, shooting percentages up 7%, that's a way that you make a ton of mistakes. There's always going to be built-in improvement, and I did have built-in improvement for Barnes, but just not to this level. He averaged almost 20 points with 1.7 threes, 8 rebounds, and 6 assists. They're great numbers. 1.3 steals and 1.5 blocks are insane numbers. These are awesome, awesome performances. Fantastic. He shot 48 from the field and 78 from the line. Okay, the 78 from the line is a big improvement as well from where he was as a rookie, 74%. Man, a second-year guy, 77. So he sort of got that figured out. The rebound rate is where it starts to get really crazy, though. His defensive rebound rate went from 15% to 19%. It's a big jump up. He shot 54 on his 2s and 34% on his 3s. He was able to finish at the rim at 65%. There's nothing gigantically unsustainable about his 2-point numbers. The thing is, for me, is he a 34% 3-point guy or is he 30? And you lose that 4%, and that 1.73 goes to 1.3. Your 20 points goes to 19 points. Your 54 from the field goes to 51, 52 from the field. And that's when you start to go, well, maybe you're not a second-round player. Maybe it's a third-round player. The next thing I ask with Barnes is what happens next? He's 22. He's played 3 seasons. Still, heaps of players improve over the course here. But what is his thing that improves? It's not minutes. Is it usage? He had 24 usage. I'm not sure that it is. It's going to have to be shooting. It's going to have to be moving from a guy that was below league average to still being below league average, but close enough to it, and pushing above that. Big assist rate spike, big block rate spike, big steal rate spike. How much of that changes? I'm not sure that goes any further. It's going to have to be shooting, 3-point proficiency, but it's also going to have to be drawing fouls, getting to the line more. That's where you go from this guy at 20th, because everything else is great, who maybe pushes to 13th. The downside is, and we've highlighted this all the time, steal and block numbers are not very sticky year on year. He could very easily have a good year next year and go 1.1 steals, 1.1 blocks, shoot 32% from 3, and be the 50th best player, easily. Or he could maintain those numbers, get a couple of extra free throws, hit 37 from 3 and average 23 points and be the 14th best player. Still, I believe, a wide range of outcomes, but the floor is a lot safer. The number 1 comparison on Crafted was second-year Chris Webber. The number 2 was fifth-year Aaron Gordon, which I believe was his final year before joining Denver. And I think that's all fair, like some struggles with shooting, some real strong defensive prowess, very good rebounding, some hidden passing. Not so hidden with Barnes, but I think that's all. They're all really strong signs. His advanced stuff, 90th percentile EPM, 84th CPM, great. Offensive load running at 89th percentile is very, very big. Does a team with Barnes running the offense to that level, can they ever be awesome? I guess that's the next question as well. Do you want Barnes having that level of offensive load while doing that stuff defensively, or does something have to give there? He's only 22, 35 minutes a night. There is still room for improvement, but I will caution that development isn't linear. Big steps forward does not mean that the next big step comes. Look at Brandon Ingram, for example. Big step forward in that 1 year most improved player, jumped right up, and then has basically been the same guy ever since. Not saying that Ingram is Barnes. Barnes is obviously a way better defender, way better passer, way worse scorer and shooter, but these improvements don't just go, well, you now tack the next part on and tack the next part on after that. Let's go to Jakob Poeltl next, who had some real early struggles. I didn't really get what Darko Rajakovic was doing in terms of how they used him. I don't know why they would give up a high pick. I don't know why he would be signed to a $20 million a year contract when he'd played 24 minutes a night. It didn't really make any sense to me whatsoever. He was 92nd in -1, 164th on Yahoo, 82nd in points leagues, 82 is his ADP, ended the season early like Barnes with a hand injury. He averaged 11 and 8.5, 2.5 assists with 1.5 blocks, 66 from the field, 55 from the line is always going to be putrid. He doesn't tempt threes, obviously. He sort of is what he is. But now we get to the stage where he's 28.5. This is the best Poeltl you are going to get. He only played 50 games and 26 minutes a night only. Again, I don't really know why, and he can do it. Why they didn't... It took until they traded away Anunoby before they decided to play him 31 minutes a night, and then he ended up getting hurt not long after that. So I think there is a chance that Jakob plays 30 minutes a night next season. So when I say Poeltl's like hit his peak, that's like, I'm talking age curve, but I think there is a chance that he plays more minutes. But there's also the possibility they re-signed Kelly Olynyk, that they play like 26 minutes of Poeltl, 22 to 23 of Olynyk, and that's it. That's your center rotation. So maybe Poeltl doesn't get back to those 30 minutes. Maybe he sticks at this level. I think there's a chance of that too. His best crafted comparison was year 8 of Clint Capella, okay? And year 7 of Hassan Whiteside, which was the last season that Whiteside was in Miami. That's not great. Capella's year 8 was 22-23. So again, solid enough. But we also know that is the season that Whiteside started to cliff, or hit the fall off the cliff, and Capella also was significantly worse, I think, this season than what he was in year 8. So that's a little red flaggy. 75th percentile EPM Poeltl, 91st on CPM, so Crafted really liked him. His rim frequency, which is how often you're contesting shots at the rim, 97 percentile. That's what he does. Doesn't always convert to blocks, 1.5 blocks a game, but it's only 26 minutes, but he just contests a lot of shots. And that's really valuable. That's why I never understood why they just didn't play him. and how they use him next season, I would say he's going to start, but pretty large range of outcomes here as to what his minutes role is going to be, because they obviously value Kelly Olynyk for whatever reason. Is it his passport? Who's to say? Probably is. And then that'll leave Poeltl in this lower minute zone. And honestly, I'm not sure that he's going to be someone that I'm super interested in drafting with that minutes downside, the cliff potential being there. Settle down, Obi. Jeez. Yeah, I know. You're a big Poeltl guy. That the cliff potential coming is not particularly enjoyable, is how I would phrase that, or excitable. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. It's winner take all time in the NBA and the NHL playoffs, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, to bet on money lines, on player props, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook, and don't forget to gamble responsibly. Today's episode is also brought to you by DoorDash. Mother's Day is coming. We are less than a week away from Mother's Day, and you want to make sure that you make mum smile. So start Mother's Day with flowers, give her gifts that she likes, food, chocolates, tech, gadgets, delivered on the very same day with DoorDash. Is your mum an outdoorsy sort? You can go and buy her something for the garden. Does she like clothes? Is she got a sweet tooth? Well, whatever you want, DoorDash can get that stuff from your favorite stores, or more importantly, your mum's favorite store, and get it sent straight to you or to her that same day. And with a Dash Pass membership, you'll save with a $0 delivery fee and reduced service fees on eligible orders from Dash Pass, that's a hard word to say, merchants that meet the minimum subtotal. Other fees, including service fees, apply, and terms also apply. So order now and get everything that you need for Mother's Day on DoorDash. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA to get 50% off your next order, up to $15 when you spend $15 on your next flour, convenience, grocery, or retail order now on DoorDash. That is LOCKEDONNBA. Order using DoorDash today. Terms apply. Okay, that is those players done. What about Immanuel Quickley? Quickley was a hard one for me because it was hard for me to look at the Knicks and go, how does he get enough minutes? They brought in DiVincenzo. There's a full season of Josh Hart. There's Barrett. Like, everyone is still, there's Grimes. What is going to happen here? And people, I guess, agreed. I'm surprised that he was only drafted in 97% of leagues Quickley. 138 was his ADP. He ended up 107th in -1, 94th on Yahoo, 87th in points. He's not yet 25. He played just 29 minutes a game for the season. He averaged 17, 4, and 5 with 0.7 steals. He's not a real high steals guy. 43 and 85 from the field with just 1.5 turnovers. 47 on twos and 40% on threes. So the number one thing we look at with Quickley there is number two. There's two things. Minutes. 29 for the season. He will play more than that. If he stays as the starting point guard in Toronto, which I expect that he does, we're talking 33 to 34 minutes a night comfortably. The next thing is finishing with his twos, because those numbers are just not good enough. He's a tough one to sort of fully get around. Now, his finishing at the rim was horrendous, 31st percentile, 59% at the rim. He hit his threes fine, but what he needs to be able to do is get that mid-range up, which was way up last season at the Knicks, but I also think that might have been fluky, and get the rim numbers up higher as well. Because he was at 61 for the Knicks the year before, and 47 from mid-range, and this season 59 and 40 from the rim and mid-range respectively. So there are some concerns that maybe some of that stuff in New York was a little fluky, but I will say this. In Toronto, he got back to 61% from the rim, but also had a horrific mid-range drop. He was at 48 mid-range in New York, 35 in Toronto. All we really need there is for the rim finishing to stick, which is possible, and the mid-range just to get to 42, 43. He was just horribly off in his time in Toronto. His best comparisons were year 3 Desmond Bane, which is last season's Des Bane, and year 3 Devontae Graham, which was the year after he had that breakout in Charlotte. And I sort of get it. Not a high steals guy, nice assists, but I do think that he's going to trend away from that comparison because he played a lot of two guard this season where he's going to be strictly a point guard, although sharing the ball with Barnesy. His advanced stuff was great again, 77th on EPM, 84th on CPM, and his shooting quality, shot quality, measure of value of a shooter, 96th percentile, despite some of that mid-range issue. I think that this is a player that if I find him at the ADP of 100 next season, smash it. No problem for me to smash that. He's going to come out projected in the 60s or 70s, I'm guessing. And we're talking year 5, Immanuel Quickley, full-time as a starting point guard. I think we are going to see, the field goals maybe they don't improve. Maybe he sits at 43. But 19, 4, and 6.5, 3 threes, maybe a steal. That's always touch and go. Totally reasonable, I think. Totally reasonable. Now, this is where the fun begins. Rowan Barrett Jr. What an interesting player. There's a bunch of people that love him for whatever reason, don't really get it. There's a bunch of people that think he's useless, which I do get. But I think the reality is somewhere in between. Barrett, for category leagues, has been bad every year. He was much better this season. He's still not even 24. He played 58 games. He played 32 minutes a night. He had some fake injuries and also some real knee soreness down the stretch. Let's just talk about his numbers. 133rd in -1 rankings. That's not good. For the whole season, that is not good. That is a waiver wire, churn throwable back-end player. Yahoo had him 206th. But to be fair, 133rd in -1 is about the best Barrett has ever done. For points leagues, he's always a clear top 100 player. That has never changed. 80th this season in points leagues, never changes. His ADP was 125, which is a gigantic steal if you drafted him in points leagues, and about bang on, but probably also a bad pick if you picked him there in category leagues. And that seems weird because he averaged 20 points a game. He hit 1.6 threes, 5 rebounds, 3.3 assists, but half a steal, 0.4 blocks. This is where the problem lies. He's below average in so many categories. Steals, blocks, assists, he's a little bit below average. Rebounds, a little bit below average. Threes, below average. Field goal percentage actually was above average, but free throws were bad and they got worse as the season went on. He hit 55% of his twos and 36% of his threes, which again is solid enough. But there's just always something that feels like it's a little bit missing, and we'll talk about this in a second. His number one comparison for this season was second-year Cedric Ceballos. That's before he went to the Lakers when he played for the Suns. Okay, get that, sort of similar size, small forward. The next one is top 5 bust legend, which you might have included Barrett in that at some point, honestly. Derek Williams, when he played for the Knicks, year 5 of Derek Williams. And that is a terrible comparison. He was 51st percentile Barrett in EPM, 30th in crafted plus minus. These are not very strong numbers. But the one thing that did improve unbelievably for Barrett once he was traded was not the minutes. They dropped. He was playing he had the potential to play big minutes in New York, but he didn't because Thibodeau ended up saying, no, like we've got other guys we'll use. We'll get you at 29. And that was never enough. So he ended up at 32 a night. But what happened is he just changed where he was taking his shots. He just, instead of taking threes where he's not particularly strong at them, instead of taking mid-ranges, he just got to the rim. That's all he did. He just got to the rim. And he got to the rim and he finished at the rim. That's it. His previous seasons at rim finishing, giggity. 50% as a rookie, horrific. 52 year 2, terrible. 52 year 3, also terrible. 57 last season, pretty bad. 53 in New York this season, terrible. 67 in Toronto. Oh, okay, what? That is a leap that is just not seen. He upped his volume from mid-range. At the rim. He took his mid-ranges away. He stopped taking them. He shot 39% from 3 in Toronto versus 33 in New York. I don't really buy that, but it's something to watch. But that's smart. He played dumb in New York a lot. Mid-ranges. Can't hit him. Can't finish at the rim. Then he said, all right, I'm just going to cut. I'm going to just take shots at the rim and I'm going to get them in. And it worked out really well. So, he also played 4 extra minutes a night in Toronto versus where he was in New York and had a lower usage. His assist rate also skyrocketed and his rebound rate skyrocketed in Toronto. Not raw numbers, but like percentage numbers. Assist rate from 12 to 18. Rebound rate from 13 to 17. These are big numbers. Steal and block rates are always putrid. They're always going to be putrid. but he was able to change a lot of things in Toronto. Now, I don't really have 100% faith that Barrett's going to do this as we move forward. Again, he showed it for us for what, 30 games? Versus the other 100 odd or 200 in his career. But a change in scenery, a change in offense, a change in role, you got to weight that a little bit. And if he's able to be what he was in Toronto, which was a 25 usage player with 61 true shooting versus 53 true shooting and 48 effective field goal in New York, which is horrible. If he's able to be that guy with that level of efficiency, then yeah, he becomes a category league player. If he maintains his higher rebound rate, his higher assist rate, if he averages 22, 7, and 4, and does it instead of 55% or 49% from the field, he does it on 53, then yeah, we are talking about a top 90 player. We've seen 32 games of it, so I'm not really ready to say that this is definitely it, but it did look like it. And that's encouraging. And I think there's actually, he played the 33 minutes a night in Toronto, like maybe he pushes that to 35. I think that's possible as well. Well, it is very easy to say that I'm a Barrett hater. That is easy to say. That is a very easy simplification of it. I didn't think RJ Barrett was a good player because he wasn't a good player. It's as simple as that. RJ Barrett was bad for 4 years and a half. He was bad. I don't think that was remotely debatable. RJ Barrett was much improved in 30 games in Toronto. Took the correct shots, made the correct shots, hit his threes, finished at the rim, improved his effort plays, passed better. All of that improved. Doesn't detract from the first 4.5 years being bad and being actually just not a winning player who was a negative. And now he turned into a good player. I still don't know that he's an awesome player. I still don't want him to be my second usage guy on a playoff team. I don't think that works. I would think you would want Quickley and Barnes to be those players. But him knowing his role, and he obviously had that tragedy at the end of the season with his brother, which is terrible. But that didn't impact his numbers really at all because just meant he didn't play barely like one game at the end of the year. Knowing his role and fitting in is really important. But this is what it's going to hinge on for Barrett. Is he the guy that now finishes at the rim and can be 55 from the field? Or does he go back to being this 47, 46 guy in New York and it's unrosterable in category leagues? I'll lean towards the Toronto stuff is real, but I'm not ready to say that yet. I'm not ready to be like, yes, this is it. He's figured it out. But it was incredibly encouraging. The next guy who started a lot of games for them is Gaz Trent. And I just don't know about this guy. He's only 25 somehow. 71 games. He played 28 minutes a night. He was sort of out of favor early on. Started to play big minutes towards the end after players got traded. Like we said, he's an unrestricted free agent. 168th in -1. Yahoo will rank him 116th because they will again try and tell you that he's a good fantasy player and he is not. 165th in points. He never turns it over, 0.7 turnovers, but that's because he never gets assists, 1.7 of them. He doesn't handle the ball. He averaged 14 points with 2.5 threes, 2.6 rebounds is putrid, 1.7 assists is terrible. Part of the reason he's able to be serviceable in the past was high steals, and he got 1.1. He shot 43 from the field, 77 from the line, 46 on his twos, 39 on his threes. He's a good three-point shooter, no question about that. He can hit threes, but he's, I think, a poor shot selection player who's a poor defender and doesn't pass, rebound, do anything. He's like, to me, and you'll see his name there, he's a worse version of Malik Beasley. His two best comparisons were some bloke by the name of Joe Hassett in year 3, and then year 7 Malik Beasley. And I think that's fine. I think Beasley's a better player, though. 68th percentile in EPM and 40th in crafted plus-minus percentile, which, like, they're okay. He's fine enough. But what I really wanted to highlight here with Trent is if what your thing is three-point shooting, he's only 73rd percentile in three-point attempt rate. He has got to get more threes up. If he turned into a Sam Merrill, if he turned into a Duncan Robinson, if he turned into a Malik Beasley, where what you are doing is 85% of your shots are coming from three, then yeah, I get it. But this guy thinks, I'm going to take a contested tough two. Why? You can't really get to the rim. You can't really finish at the rim. Although he was at 60% there, which is not awesome. It's 38th percentile. It's better than what some other players are. He never gets to the free throw line at this point, but he just takes too many long twos instead of taking the threes, which he's good at. And that's where and like he's a massive defensive gambler, doesn't set anybody else up for anything. I just think he's not a very good player, and we'll find out where his role is, but I think that the peak of Gary Trent was amplified by Nick Nurse and Nick Nurse's minutes and schemes, and we're never going to get back to that. The last starter that we're going to talk about here is the prestige penis, Gradey Dick. Not because I think he's penciled in as a starter, but we saw clearly down the stretch that they wanted to give him a larger role, giggity. I don't know why that was a giggity. It's not really, but large and Dick in the same vicinity makes it funny. But they wanted to see what he could do. Now, what the answer to the question, what can Gradey Dick do? The answer is not very much. And that's not a great answer for your lottery pick. This is also one of those things, and it's not me tooting my own horn. So I get lots of things wrong. But it's more about the way that, and it happens a lot. Like I don't want to get into real life playoff stuff at the moment too much, but there's a lot of Dutch writing of Anthony Edwards. He's been great, but like, let's maybe settle down a little bit before all these sweeping statements get made. And this happened with Dick all the time in the draft. Why, you got to take the best shooter in the draft. And my pushback would be like, how do you know that he's the best shooter? Look, I've got no idea that he is. There's nothing here to suggest that he is far and away the best shooter in this draft. Nothing. But we always love to latch onto that. Well, look at his numbers. Okay. Don't care. These guys struggle so very often coming into the league. It's just, when you chuck these superlatives on these players, so he's the best college player, the best college shooter, the best shooter, like none of this stuff has any reality in sticking. And we're going to run into the same problem, maybe not as much of this draft because maybe there's not even a player on the Dick level. But we just got to be really careful about throwing out these very absolute statements. It's so, like, you're going to be wrong every time, basically. Like, every time. And it's going to lead to problems. If we look at what Dick, like, he didn't play much in the G League, but shot poorly there. Shot only 8. Well, he finished 336 with minus 1, which is obviously horrible. 8.5 points, 1.5 threes, 2 rebounds, 1 assist, 0.6 steals, 43 and 86. Shot 37 from 3 and 50 from 2. But I wouldn't say that it's all disastrous. Now, the advanced stats will say yes, it was. 6% EPM, 6% percentile, crafted plus minus. His true shooting was in the 31st percentile. That's all horrible. He is only 20. He only played 21 minutes a night. But shooting 50% on 2s and 37% on 3s and 86 from the line as a rookie, I think is actually very encouraging. And again, he's got a lot of work to do, very clearly. His mid-range numbers were okay, 41%. Threes were okay. Rim was not great, 57%, but there's a lot to work on, clearly. Rebounds, assists, usage, shots going in. His number one comparison was actually a Raptors player, rookie year Terrence Ross. That's not a bad place to be. His second best comparison was rookie year Zaire Williams in Memphis, and that's not a good place to be. So I was not high on Dick coming into the draft. I am probably ending up now like higher on Dick than a lot of people were. Well, sorry, I'm higher on Dick now than I think a lot of people who were higher on me at the draft are now. I'm sort of sticking fat on it. I think I had him, I don't know, like 15th or 17th in the draft. I think that's about right. A relatively limited player with decent size but doesn't always use it. Can be a solid enough shooter but doesn't show the elite shooting traits to me, the JJ Redick off-screen stuff. None of that was really there, and I think that's probably about where we sit. And that is going to lead to a limited fantasy player. Maybe he's able to prove me wrong. Again, this is not a disastrous season. It's totally okay. But he is just not that far away from where I had him, and that's not a good thing. Let's talk about some bench players on this team. The other guys that we need to discuss, because there is a man here who's one of the best fantasy players in the NBA, and his name is Kelly Olynyk. And you can scoff as much as you want, but Kelly Olynyk has got a game that is suited to fantasy. Olynyk was the 121st ranked player in -1, 83rd on Yahoo. Again, he wasn't that good. 138th in points leagues. Somehow people drafted him Even when he was in Utah, 142nd ADP, 15% of leagues. He averaged 10 and 5 with 4.5 assists. This is a center. Averaged 4.5 assists in 23 minutes. He played 78 games. He's 33 years of age. He got a contract extension. So 10, 5, and 4.5, a steal, half a block, shot 56 and 83. This is why he's a great fantasy player. A big man who passes, hits threes, high field goals, high free throws. They just don't exist everywhere. And we saw it again here. Once he started, played 31 minutes, he was rolling as a top 40 player. The thing you've got to realize with Kelly Olynyk is no one, I don't think, is heading into the season saying, Kelly Olynyk is our 31-minute-a-night starting center. So those things flash, and they've flashed a couple of times, a couple of moments in Utah, the big one back in Houston, this one here, is that when those chances arise, he delivers. At some point he won't because he's 33. But 63 on twos and 39 on threes are elite numbers. Pair that with 4.5 assists in 23 minutes. This is an elite fantasy option. Just doesn't always translate to real life production. Not that he's bad. 56th in EPM, 43rd percentile CPM. His portability, 98th percentile, meaning just chuck him on a team and he fits in. And I think that makes sense. A good shooting, okay defending, good passing big man. There's room for that player. The number one comparison to his season was year 9 of Frank Brickowski. And you go, okay, that's fun. The next one is I fell on the floor. Year 15 of LeBron James. And that's the season that LeBron, his last season in Cleveland. That's crazy to me. Now, obviously, this is not saying that Olynyk and LeBron are the same player. It's not saying that Olynyk and LeBron were even on the same level then. It's saying that a lot of the advanced markers, which are scaled to a per minute situation, that was similar. The passing, some shooting, the efficiency, the rebounding. Very interesting. We need to watch this space with Toronto as if they do move on from Poeltl, because there is a chance they said we're just getting rid of Poeltl and Olynyk as our starter, and if that's the case, we are talking top 60 very comfortably. If he is a 30-minute starter, Kelly Olynyk, he is a top, let's say 60 to be cautious player. The next one is Bruce Brown, who I thought was really quite disappointing. To me, I missed on him. I think I had him 110th, and he didn't clearly lead up to that. But I was also very much in the camp of do not expect Brown to do what he did in Denver. Because in Denver, he played the backup 1, 2, 3, and 4. So he got a mix of big man stats, forward stats, wing stats, point guard stats. And he was never going to get that chance to do that in Indiana. Because they had Nembhard, they had Halliburton, they had McConnell. He was never going to be a point guard. So that dropped a lot of his numbers down. But it was worse than I expected. 11 points, 0.8 threes, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, 0.9 steals, 48 and 82, just completely mid numbers. Then the knee problems, things got worse in Toronto, and his comparisons are horrific. Damian Wilkins, I think he's now the head of OTE, Overtime Elite. I think that's right. Year 4, Damian Wilkins, that was his last year in the league, and 6th year of Doug West. I think he's a Timberwolves legend, Doug West. 37th percentile on EPM, 8th in crafted. Like, they are horrible numbers. And part of the thing, again, was he just wasn't asked to do that much. His box creation, 56th percentile. It dropped about 25% from where it was in Denver. And it was relatively easy to foresee that. But when that part of it fell away, then he just didn't do enough. And maybe we've just got to consider Brown as a backup point guard. And that's really how he's able to have success, especially from a fantasy point of view. Brown is about to turn 28. He played 28 minutes a night, so the role was okay, about the same as the year before. But also, there's so much uncertainty now. Like, where does he play? Is he on this team at the start of the year? I honestly don't know. I would say that any chance of Brown being a standard league contributor is probably not there. The last one we've got to talk about is a player who did get some starts down the stretch, and he's really bad. It's Ochai Agbaji. Agbaji is 24. He came across in the Kelly Olynyk deal, which, again, I actually think that they made that trade with the Jazz to get Olynyk, not to get Agbaji. I know people seem to think that they traded for Agbaji because they see something in him. I actually don't think that's the case, but maybe it is. I think they traded for Olynyk. 78 games played for Ochai, 21 minutes a night. Started a lot for this team down the stretch. 316th in -1, 323rd in points, averaged 6 points, almost 3 rebounds, 1 assist, 0.6 blocks, 0.6 steals, Shot 41 from the field, 66 from the line. 52 on his twos, 29 on his threes. This is a man that came in as the best player in college basketball, as the best shooter, or one of the best shooters in his draft class. Can't hit him. Can't hit him. His best comparisons, Perry Jones the third, year 3. Yeah. Darrell Arthur, post-Achilles, year 4. They are terrible comparisons. 27th percentile on EPM, 7th on Crafted, bad. But I will give him credit. Fixing or figuring out what you are as a player and how you fit in the NBA can be key for these guys, because he's not going to be a high-level scorer. He's not going to be a usage player. He's not going to be a shooter. He's not going to be an offensive guy. What he turned himself into was a gritty defender. And in terms of rim defense, 87th percentile, which as a 6'5", 6'6" forward, that's super impressive. 0.6 blocks as that sort of a player in 21 minutes is impressive. The problem is that everything else around it is trash, and I don't think he's actually a rotation player. So I would have zero hope here for him, and he's going to be playing behind Barnes and Barrett, or Dick or Trent or whatever. He's just not a part of anything. But I wanted to mention him because some people still like him. The Final Four fluffers will still have a little bit there with him, probably not as much anymore. But he's also another one of those scouting decision guys where it's when the 24-year-old beats up on competition in college, maybe have a level of skepticism about it. So Abaji, again, some nice defensive stuff. Just a horrible fantasy player who I don't think will ever be a good fantasy player. And that is the end of the Toronto Raptors. I'm not going to get into detail on Jalen McDaniels. I'm not going to bother about talking about Jonte Porter because his numbers were good, but who cares? He's never playing in the NBA again because he's got the IQ of a peanut. So he's out as well. And then your Freeman Liberties and your bloody Bouchers and Warrers, we don't need to talk about those players. They would hope that they would get that pick, I would guess. Although, if you're going to lose a pick and it goes to pick 7 or 8, this is the draft to do it in and then be totally unencumbered in terms of pick obligations. Maybe that's the way you do it. It just sets your rebuild back a year. The good thing is you've got the Pacers pick to somewhat supplement it. And honestly, pick 7, pick 19 in this draft, is there any difference? Probably not. Your pool of players to select from is smaller, but your outcomes I don't think will be that different. So if I'm the Raptors, I probably unless I'm jump up to number 1 or 2, I'm okay with losing this pick if I have to. I would never have made the trade. You want every pick an asset you can sort of get. But if you're going to lose it this year. Because, we're going to start getting into draft stuff in a week or 2. It's not very good. What is good, though, is when you double bang, when you thumb it up, and when you leave all of those sexy little comments under the video. And on audio, you subscribe, you follow, you 5-star it, all of that stuff. Guys, we are done here. I'm so excited after talking about my favorite team. And, of course, talking to all of my favorite people in Canada. I hope you guys have a fantastic time in the greatest country in the world. We are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.